The NHL often works in mysterious ways, as in, somehow, various rivals and/or on ice enemies over the years have ended up having a common goal, eventually, on the same team. Whether it be short-lived, like the All-Star Game, or for much longer, on their respective teams for good, these 8 players that previously went head-to-head have had to put their bad blood aside, or at least pretend to. In this video, I'm going to go over 4 sets of players that once, or might still, have a real reason to dislike each other, but have had to acclimate to the same team at the same time. If you watch or are familiar with NHL hockey at all, then you'll know that 2 of the most dominant players league-wide for a substantial amount of time have been Sidney Crosby and Evgeni Malkin, otherwise known as the two-headed monster. Similarly to the younger duo of McDavid and Draisaitl, they've provided a valuable 2-1 punch at center and have a lethal combination to face on the power play. But if I were to tell you that before these 2 superstars were selected by Pittsburgh, roughly a year apart, that they were for a short time bitter rivals in a highly contested game internationally. Yes, before they cultivated what seems to be a lifelong friendship, they first found themselves suiting up on opposing teams during the 2005 World Juniors. The highly contested series of matches that took place in North Dakota showcased some of the best talent the future had to offer, and unsurprisingly, Team Canada had one of, if not the most elite roster the World Juniors had ever seen, featuring players such as Patrice Bergeron, Shea Weber, Ryan Getzlaf, and of course, the next one himself, Sidney Crosby. And really, Team Russia on paper didn't look half bad either, with the likes of the Great Eight and Alex Ovechkin, Anton Khudobin, Alexander Radulov, and Evgeni Malkin. Therefore, it's no surprise that these 2 teams dominated, with Canada having games such as an 8-1 lead over Team Sweden and Finland in preliminaries, and Team Russia defeating Team USA in the semifinals by a landslide. Both teams made their way to the finals, for the most part, with ease. But unfortunately for Team Russia, they couldn't compete with the immense talent that Team Canada had to offer in the finals, and were dealt a huge blow as Ovechkin was forced to leave the game due to injury. Therefore, they had to settle for silver amid a 6-1 defeat. Crosby, who had had multiple assists in the game, was one of the key contributors in Canada being victorious. And while they were focusing on a very hyped-up rivalry between Ovechkin and Crosby, they missed one that was even more interesting in and of itself. Possibly the strangest dynamic featured here is the relationship between Connor McDavid and Brandon Manning. While it may seem even stranger for a player on Edmonton's roster to have a bitter rivalry outside of Alberta, this bad blood came about naturally, as Brandon Manning, who was playing for the Philadelphia Flyers at the time, took it upon himself to, according to McDavid, purposefully injure the budding superstar in his rookie year. After a regular season game in the city of brotherly love, how ironic, Manning revealed his true intentions from the previous season amid the contest. And when asked about the rivalry, McDavid couldn't hold back any longer and called Manning's actions classless. But despite this, in an attempt to save his job, former GM Peter Chiarelli went to work in the first half of the 2018-19 season, and one of the trades he made included Brandon Manning as a return piece. And even though Manning did claim that his new captain welcomed him with open arms and the feud was forgotten, it's pretty difficult to believe that the former foes were best buds in the locker room. And while it's definitely no secret that several rivalries are born within the postseason, the intensity seems to be at an all-time high in the final series of the playoffs. Therefore, it's no surprise that the series between 2 very physical teams that took place last year was as intense as they come. And for Torey Krug, within the final frame of Game 1, the Blues had apparently gotten under the defenseman's skin, so much that he decided to viciously check Robert Thomas following a bout of extracurriculars with David Perron at front. And what may have been called charging during the regular season was fair play in the finals. And even though refs saw nothing wrong with the helmetless hit on Thomas, it humorously came back to haunt number 47 more than a year later. Following Krug's signing with the St. Louis Blues earlier in the year, decided to playfully rip his new teammate by posting about the hit on social media while saying, "Didn't we just become best friends?" And while many Boston fans were probably heartbroken when reading this, Krug replied with "Yep." Regardless, I'm sure most NHL fans are secretly going to miss the Pasta Krug spin at warm-ups. Am I right? And like the highly anticipated Battle of Alberta, the NHL All-Star Game seems to be kind of like Christmas for the players. As in, it's the one weekend where everyone tries to like each other and get along for the sake of the festivities. And for bitter rivals Matthewchuk and Leon Draisaitl, it was no different. Following multiple altercations on ice between the two forwards, the All-Star Game, interestingly, was in between that time that Tkachuk got ragdolled by Draisaitl's teammate Zach Kassian, and when he answered the bell the following game. Therefore, for Draisaitl and the rest of the team, Tkachuk was probably a hot topic of discussion, for less than savory reasons. Prior to the festivities beginning, number 29 validated the fact that Tkachuk was still living rent-free in his head. After being asked a question by media personnel, what would he do if he and McDavid had to play with Tkachuk in 3-on-3? He replied with, "I would get off the ice." But as I said, it's kind of the same charade as the approaching holidays. Everyone is pretty much expected to just tolerate those in the vicinity for a short amount of time. And, just as predicted, minus McDeezus, the rivals were put out on ice together during the 3-on-3 competition, and even both contributed to a goal after some back-and-forth action. But there's no doubt that these two will be going at it again here sooner rather than later.